Hello, everyone. Welcome to 360 Coaching with educational and premier approaches to teaching and learning. Today, I have Dr. Tamera Foley with me. Hello.
Hi, Cassandra. How are you?
I am wonderful. She is a great friend, but she's so knowledgeable in trauma. So Dr. Foley began her professional career in Normal, Illinois in special ed. So she's a special ed resource teacher, and she's been one since 1981. So she has a lot of experience and expertise. She then moved back to Rockford, Illinois, where she spent 15 years as a cross-categorical special ed teacher, 5th grade, and assistant director of Sunday school. She has been the director of Sunday school as well as the assistant principal and special ed coordinator. This woman is phenomenal. She has so many tools under her belt. And during the 15 years, she continuously participated and conducted training throughout her time. Dr. Foley spent a month exploring special ed and support in Hungary. This is amazing. Having international connections is key, especially with 21st century learning. And with the Czech Republic through the Fulbright Scholarship, which is, that's amazing in itself. And so she has various positions, the 5th largest school system in Georgia, with supporting students in the area of discipline, social emotional learning, which is so key right now, and special ed, behavior supports, mental supports. I mean, she has it all, and literacy. Dr. Foley has led initiatives in the implementation of school-based health, asthma-friendly school initiative, and others, and district impact on teaching and learning students. Wow, she has had so much experience on mental health, especially in the state of Alabama for the mental health department with disabilities, students with disabilities. Dr. Foley is so passionate, and she knows her stuff with an international lens on the future and the world. So we know she's passionate about students, and she is always an advocate. So welcome.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that.
So today she has a lot to share with us. So you want to tell us a little bit more about how great you are?
No, that's good. I'll just tell you as I go through the information, I'll just give you just another little lens of me.
Okay, so like I said, she is phenomenal. So today she has something great to share with us. Listen up and make sure we follow her on social media, but she'll give us a lot of great things. All right, go ahead.
Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today my topic is the importance of social and emotional learning today and in the future for children of trauma. So as Cassandra introduced, I'm Tamera Foley. I'm a special education teacher. I am certified in social and emotional learning and character development and instruction. I'm also a certified trauma practitioner. I'm a darkness to light trainer, and I've been an administrator in the school system, mostly in urban districts for many years. So today I want to talk about social and emotional learning. But first I want to talk about emotional health. Emotional health is so important, especially today during COVID-19. I've been reading so many articles about your mental and emotional health. So there are so many people that are suffering from depression, loneliness, stress, and people are just having trouble sleeping. Research in adults 55 years and older has shown that feeling socially isolated is connected with depressive symptoms and higher levels of psychological distress. So what does this really mean? It means that not having these social interactions makes people feel sad, they feel worried, and they're more prone to emotional highs and lows. So the uncertainty of this crisis is also causes challenges with our emotional health. And this is why we need to look at social and emotional learning as being important for now and important in the future. So during this pandemic or COVID-19 or different time in our lives, we're all living in collective trauma. Collective trauma refers to the psychological upheaval that is shared by a group of people who all experience an event. So this type of trauma can affect groups of people of any size, including entire nations or societies. And this is what we're really seeing right now. So let's take a brief moment, though, to define social and emotional learning. So I want to use the definition from the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And they define social and emotional learning as the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain relationships, and make responsible decisions. So go ahead.
I want to chime in here because you are so right. And when the pandemic came, we were all worried, we were stressed, we were overwhelmed as teachers and educators, and it was very hard for us not to show that. So emotionally, I think many of us, especially me in general, we weren't right to just to deal with this and to grapple with it ourselves, and then to teach our students like everything's okay. I'm a little nervous about this upcoming fall, and everything you're saying is really spot on.
Thanks, Cassandra. You know, I'm going to be doing something later, and I'll be able to share it, and if you'd share it with your community about this and about getting ready and how do we help children, because we really have to be honest with children, because when we're not okay, we need to let them know, because they will just model our behavior. So if we say, oh, everything's fine, well, they're hearing the news, they're looking, you know, their own little social media platforms. And so one of the things I'll talk about is just being honest with children and letting them know that things are not okay, but they are going to get better. And just to say that that is one of the things that I'll be rolling out a new book, a new children's book, and that is certainly something that I will be talking about. And that is really the premise of the book, is being honest with kids, but yet supporting them. So you're right. None of us were ready for the pandemic. Okay. This is part of a life that we've never had to deal with. But we have to also let kids know that even though it's new, it's not going to last forever. We've seen that with Ebola and everything else. It's not going to last forever, and that it will come to an end. So giving them those supports. So I think that's really important, but thanks so much for bringing that up. So there are 8 competencies or components of social and emotional learning. CASEL, the collaborative, only uses 5, but I'm going to talk about, today, we're going to talk about 8 of them. So the first is personal responsibility. And this is a person's likelihood to be careful and reliable in his or her own actions and when contributing to a group. The next is optimistic thinking, a person's attitude of confidence, hopefulness, and positive thinking about himself or herself and her life or his life in the past, in the present, and in the future. Goal-directed behavior. And this is a person's ability to start and push through those tasks. And this is important because right now we're pushing through this pandemic. Social awareness, a person's ability to show respect for others' ideas and behaviors, and to recognize her or his impact on others, and to use cooperation and tolerance in social situations. Decision-making. This is the person's approach to problem solving that involves learning from others and from his or her previous experiences. Relationship skills. A person's consistent performance of socially acceptable actions that allow for positive connections with others. And of course, self-awareness. A person's realistic understanding of his, her own emotional strengths and areas of growth and consistent desire to improve. And last but not least, self-management. A person's success in controlling his or her emotions and behaviors and to succeed in a new or challenging situation.
This is
so we may not.
This is a lot.
It is a lot. And just to let you know that the Urban Assembly kind of added some additional ones. And so that's why I wanted to talk about those, because CASEL only talks about 5, but I thought those other ones were very, very important. And so that's why I incorporate them in my presentations. And when I talk about social and emotional learning.
No, they are so important, but it also gets me connected and thinking about, do our social emotional programs in K-12 have these components? And if you're thinking about like, and so I often wonder if leaders and educational administrators, if you are looking for a social emotional program, make sure it has all the pieces necessary for you to, work with the whole child. So yes, these key components are great.
Thanks so much. So even though we may not be able to provide this exact type of engagement, if you're teaching online or whatever, that you would in the classroom, but it is so important for children to feel connected. Students need to feel connected and mimic the structure of that typical school day. And I know it's difficult. I know that. But researchers contend that the factors such as grouping and the learning environment are so important for children to develop self-efficacy, social awareness, the growth mindset, and self-management. So we see, and we already know that routines and relationships are important. And they're important whether students are being taught in the traditional classroom or whether they're being taught virtually. So children in trauma often suffer in silence. Trauma is stored in the nonverbal part of the brain, and it's not expressed verbally. So they may not talk about it or may not be easily identified. But social emotional learning assists children to cope with many different situations. It teaches children how to connect their actions to their thoughts and to their feelings. And this happens when they begin noticing feelings and physical sensations in their bodies, such as heat. Oh, I'm just so embarrassed. I'm ashamed. Or pressure or stress, tingling, their muscle tension, when they're angry or nervous, or when they feel overwhelmed. They may just have a headache or they may have a stomach ache. Children need to start understanding those physical sensations of their bodies and connecting them to their emotions. So who's going to teach them this? Once they know these things, they can learn how to name them, how to describe their feelings, such as sadness, frustration, or anger. Social and emotional learning teaches them how to safely express their feelings in a healthy way, verbally or non-verbally, and learn the coping strategies for managing their feelings as well. So social and emotional learning serves as a key tool to address children in trauma and as a resource that shows explicit instruction in metacognition and guided practice. So it is so important that we're using social and emotional learning in our practice with interpersonal skills or intrapersonal skills. So this helps to form that foundation on which to build those relationships with others, because it helps them to manage more easily or navigate their interpersonal or intrapersonal relationships. And that can change how people learn and interact with others.
I hear you.
Go ahead.
Do you mind if, because every time you're talking, I'm like, wow, how can I better facilitate a classroom with just these tools that you're giving us? And so many things I'm thinking, you're right, building relationships, but how do I build the relationships throughout the day of the classroom? And so a lot of that comes to mind is like, oh, morning meeting must engage in social emotional learning. Throughout the day, pulling kids in the back of the reading, how things going at home, what's going on, are you okay? That is those personal one-to-one touch points. And then, even on the carpet and with an actual curriculum. So I'm thinking 3 points a day where I can really engage and build relationships while I'm trying to encourage social emotional learning throughout the kids. So infusing in the curriculum besides for it being a separate entity. So yes, you got me going.
Right. And it's so important because one of the resources that I've sent that they'll get is something from 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, and it's like a playbook. And this playbook actually gives them activities. And so 𝐃𝐶L, there are a lot of great resources out there, but they have a lot of great resources. But these are things that you can use right now, tomorrow, if you wanted to. It's already there. You don't have to put it together, and somebody else has already done that for you, and they're great resources. So again, I wanted to give something that is something that they can use right now, because that's important, because as people go back to school, children go back to school, we don't have a whole lot of time. So I wanted to make sure they had something that they can use and actually implement.
Yes, you hear that. Heard it first. Dr. Foley is going to give you the download. So make sure you download her link and get access to that right away. Okay.
Right. Okay, so as the brain develops, the neural pathways are created, and these connections are shaped over time by experience. So we know that there's an increasing evidence that neuroplasticity is disrupted by stress, and it's disrupted and is seen on both the structural and molecular levels. So stressful early experiences alter these neural functioning and connectivity within and between the areas of the brain being responsible for coordinating thoughts and actions and regulating the stress response. So stress causes the release of the neurotransmitter cortisol and constant unresolved stress, which is known as the cortisol cascade. And too much cortisol leads to mood and behavior issues and disruptions in memory and recall. So we know that in a 1998 study found that there's a strong relationship between exposure to abuse or dysfunction and multiple health risk factors later in life. And in other words, the more trauma a child experiences, the more development of a child's brain is impacted. However, we know that students can respond to the effects of trauma by developing these social emotional competencies. So the brain's neuroplasticity makes it possible for repeated experiences to shape the brain and even further reverse that chronic stress. Okay, so fortunately, research has repeatedly shown the positive effects of social and emotional learning interventions. And these studies have shown that social and emotional learning can teach children to cope with stress, manage anger, and avoid distractions. So for example, teaching children to slow their breathing in stressful moments can work to control their responses and manage their behavior. So I want to share 3 ways that we can support social and emotional learning strategies during this pandemic as well. So the first thing is just to create continuity. It's an important aspect of social and emotional learning, especially for students experiencing trauma. And the disruption in their current environment, it is certainly challenging and overwhelming for them. So I hope that students have the opportunity to connect with their peers, so that they could keep in contact and communicate over the summer. Peer relationships are critical for social and emotional development. Another thing is inter and intrapersonal skill development. A study in this area shows that how you connect to your own thoughts may matter than how you connect with other thoughts or other people. And students need to reflect on their own thinking and just have an awareness of their own thought processes. So it would be great if they could journal daily to document this time in their lives. And this is also great for adults too. And they're actually thinking at the time. Because as time goes by, we think differently, we forget. So this is a time in history, and that they may forget their feelings as they grow older. But this documentation, self-reflection is so important for students, and it's imperative in this pandemic that we're experiencing right now. And it's important for children to utilize their higher order thinking skills and synthesizing these ideas and thoughts. And last but not least, we want to make sure that we're building support for the entire family. Families are still going through crisis situations. Families are in crisis now, and some will still be in the future. Engaging those families in school-wide approaches to social and emotional learning is instrumental in planning for the fall as we support families now, children now, and if we support them in the future. So having those conversations with parents about how they're feeling about COVID-19 and their perceptions. Administrators can hold virtual meetings around the social, emotional, and mental health of families in their school. And there's just other ways that they can also share this with their families.
You brought up a great point, which is connecting to the community and the families. More schools are really seeing this as how do we help the whole child? And if we want to help the whole child, what does that look like and what does that entail? And many times it is wraparound services. So we have to kind of survey our parents and identify what are their areas of needs and what connections can we make to where we're not just giving them a piece of paper and saying, hey, go check out this service, to where the service comes to the meeting and say, we have programs that will support you in these areas. So a lot of schools now are really considering those wraparound services meet the needs of all their kids in the school.
And that's a great point. And I just want people to understand, even as they're sending out surveys, everybody's not good about filling surveys out. So they might want to just pick up the phone and just have a phone call or do a video chat or just do something different. Expand the horizon of how we collect data, because it's so important that the parents are feeling that connected. But if I'm a parent who's struggling and I'm overwhelmed and I've just got so much going on and I'm out there working and trying to make money and still trying to care for my kids and my family, I just may not feel like filling out a survey. And when we're doing that, make sure there's only a few questions. We don't need 20 questions, 5, 10, 7, that's really enough to take the data that we need. So I just want to encourage people to do that. So that was a great point, and thanks so much. So how do we talk to parents about social and emotional learning? So a recent study indicated that parents prefer the term life skills over social and emotional learning because they understand that term better and it's more familiar to them. Remember that some of them have never heard social and emotional learning when they were in school. And perhaps using that terminology, the life skills, they're familiar with them. So we have to help them to be familiar with the terms and incorporate that at home. 78% of parents believe that life skills are equally as important as academic development.
Wow.
It's also suggested, yes. So parents want social and emotional learning. They just don't necessarily know what it really is. But if you talk to them in the terms of social and emotional learning is life skills. And then you help them to become more familiar with the terminology that you want them to use. So many parents,
because so as a lens in education, when I think life skills, I think SPED, right? And so I often wonder, well, I guess they're not in that genre, so they don't understand that jargon. So that makes sense. But I always assume life skills with special, special ed, special needs. And so I know you do so much with SPED. So do parents get confused when you actually introduce that as life skills?
Well, I think that parents won't get confused if you use it in the right context, if you define it. And remember, everybody doesn't have that special education lens. So everybody, but I think one of the things that I always try to do is to define it. What do I mean by this? So self-awareness, how to be aware of myself, my surroundings, my thoughts, my feelings. That's something we all want to do. So, we teach a different set or different component of life skills when we talk about special education, how to get up, how to brush your teeth, how to set the alarm, how to do those things. So it all depends on the context, but I think it's so important that we learn and we do define it and define it in relation to the language that we want them to use with social emotional learning. And I think that will minimize that confusion. Okay. So one of the things that we want to do is to bridge that gap. And so in bridging that gap, we want to introduce the terminology and just make them feel more comfortable in this arena. But how do we do that? So first of all, we introduce the terms I just talked about, like responsibility, resilience, empathy, self-regulation, gratitude, active listening, and growth mindset. So we need to let them know, not just throwing them out there, what does it mean? And using examples. So there's a great opportunity for teaching and also helping them to be self-aware to increase their buy-in. We also need to meet the parents where they are. You have to take into consideration that there's cultural influences and life experiences of those students and families. So social and emotional learning may also require them to confront their own biases, and that may not always be comfortable for people. So just be aware of that. And then be ready for those difficult conversations. Remember that anytime you have parents and students who are experiencing trauma, they may have some mixed emotions. And so we need to make sure that we're empathetic, that we're expressing our concerns with sensitivity when sharing strategies to improve the student's development. So utilizing examples is imperative in helping the students understand the concerns. And last but not least ever is to involve the students. Have students share their progress and how they feel about what's going on with them and how they're doing in school. Have them practice sharing the concepts with their parents at home. It could be a homework assignment. Involving parents forms deeper connections within the school and within the greater community. So remember, while we know that children, not all children will experience trauma, but they all will face challenges at some point in their lives. So all can benefit from learning skills for managing adversity. And I just wanted to bring up just a couple of general techniques to use when working with children experiencing trauma. Make sure we're communicating with counselors or social workers or whatever supports you have in your school, behavior interventionists, peer supports. Make sure that you're providing structure and consistency in their day, in their life, because they don't need any more upheaval. And let them know when transitions are coming. Ease them into it. Hey, today we're going to have da-da-da-da. Tomorrow we're going to da-da-da-da. Let's get them ready for that and provide them a choice, okay? Don't just, it's got to always be this way. And you might have to say, okay, today it's going to be this way, but tomorrow how would you like to work with this? How would you like to deal with this? And develop their strengths and their interests. Be there for them, not just rushing through, but you have to listen. You have to, when we ask people to be present, so we need our educators, our parents, our social workers, everybody to be present with the children. And then we have to make a plan. Sometimes there's times when things just get overwhelming for children. And how do they get out of there and remove themselves for just a moment without showing some behavioral issues? So make sure that we're putting a plan together to help them to do that. And then we, as the people who teach, who share, and who pour in our lives and our emotions, we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. So we have to make sure that we're practicing that self-care. So a trauma-sensitive environment that supports children needs to feel safe and needs to feel supported. So this paired with strong adult social emotional competencies and support, SEL supports for students, helps to ensure children will cultivate healthy student behaviors and have opportunities to thrive in the face of hardships and difficulties in their lives. Wow. So, end of my presentation.
I mean, you just got me thinking about the whole classroom, the whole school day, and what are the areas of need, and how could we provide voice, how can we provide choice, and what are some things that we can do as school systems to insert the social emotional learning and these skills for students who are in trauma. And so, wow, you kind of blow my mind, blow my mind, because this is amazing. But I've already known you were extraordinary. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much. I just want to, this couple of the downloads that I sent you, that I don't know how you're going to link them or post them, but I wanted to make sure that I posted some for the adults to look at their own social emotional learning, to look at themselves. Because before we can be effective with children, we have to know who and where we are. And so I just a couple worksheets for them. It's really personal. They don't need to share it with anybody, but just really something for them to look at themselves. And I think that just is so important, that we as adults also know where we are before we can actually be effective for children. Also, just another great resource is there is a assessment that is on the CASEL website that teachers, you can either download a hard copy or you can go on and do it electronically. And it actually tells you information and gives you some strengths, things you need to work on. And so I think that also, and it's free. And so I think that's a great resource for people to do.
Well, I'm definitely going to go download it like today. And because I think, this is not my field of expertise, so I don't know really what to call it or what I'm personally, went through during that time, but it really will. And then I'm wondering, like, wow, if our students can take it, that could be a great entryway for discussion. And let's talk about some of these things. So yes, I love it. And I'm gonna definitely make sure you download it, because I'm going to download it. So other than that, I appreciate you, Dr. Foley, for hanging out with me.
And thank you so much, Cassandra, again for, I was always coming to the summit, but thanks so much for having me to be a part of it and just to share my passion and my voice. So I certainly appreciate it. And I hope that this information will help someone and just learn, and just as we become better educators and as we become better people. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.